Hey, what's up, family? Welcome to another episode of Success in Business Podcast. This is a video podcast where it's our mission to educate, empower, and equip the small, minority, and women and disadvantaged business owners to succeed in business. I'm your host, Attorney Goodwill Pierre, and I'm excited to share another pre-recorded workshop titled Business Owners and Mental Health. Now, this workshop was recorded at our 5th annual Success in Business Missouri City, Texas Procurement Forum, Pathways to Prosperity, Empowering Local Entrepreneurs. This workshop features Dr. Miriam Harris from Nirvana Behavioral Solutions. You may remember Dr. Harris from a previous podcast episode where I interviewed her and we talked in depth about mental health in the disadvantaged business community. The workshop presented for you today was hosted by Missouri City, Texas Councilwoman Sonia Brown Marshall, and it was recorded in front of a live audience of business owners, which brought a unique aspect to the discussion of mental health in the disadvantaged business community. So don't forget to subscribe, and share this video podcast with your friends and colleagues. Please don't forget to visit us on our website, successinbusiness.org/events for more info and information to sign up for newsletters, as well as to register for events. We have some free events coming up that creates pathways to prime. So I know you want to be there. You can follow us on Instagram at Success in Business, Facebook at True Success in Business. And for questions or to give topics for future podcasts, please hit us up at info@successinbusiness.org. So grab a pen and a notebook. Get ready to grow. Again, this is another episode of Success in Business Podcast. I am your host, Attorney Goodwill Pierre. Until next time, I wish you success in business. Let's get ready to dive into this workshop. I'll see you soon.
This is something that's, as you stated earlier, personal to me as well. Small business owners, minority business owners, women business owners, and how to deal with things that you probably think that no one else is dealing with. And so we want you to be involved, we want you to ask questions. If you want to move up, definitely move up. But one of the things we have to remember, you have to be really nice and courteous, and then they're gonna call on you with other questions, because this can get really riled up if we let it go. And another thing, we only gonna do this for 30 minutes now. We're gonna do this for 30 minutes. I learned from last year, when this gets going, it's gonna really hit you someplace deep and personal. And so I'm just excited, ladies, about what is going on. And as I told them, see, I was supposed to be in the middle, and I just didn't think I fit. And I think that the realness of this is gonna come out when you get it. So without further ado, ladies, the show is yours.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay back there? All right. Well, we are going to jump right into this session today with Dr. Harris. She is going to bring us a wealth of knowledge on how to take care of our mental psyches, our mental health, as we continue to forge the paths of leadership and undertaking small business ownership. So I have a list of questions here, but please, as we move through this process and as you're thinking of things that may touch you personally, just raise your hand up and I'll make sure to acknowledge you so that we can get the doctor here to chime in. Now you guys see she's rolled her sleeves up, so she's ready. She's ready for us. All right, Dr. Harris, welcome on today. The first thing I want to talk about is understanding some unique challenges. And unique challenges for women, if you will, especially small business owners. What are some of the unique mental challenges that minority and women business owners face compared to their counterparts?
Thank you for having me. Okay, I want to start by just identifying, I'm not going to say that I'm religious, but I want to start by saying something really quickly before we get into this segment. Mental health is a very important topic for me. That has kind of been my life work. I want you to remember that God's gift to you is who you are, and who you become is your gift back to him. So Al Green spoke earlier about some of us are born, I like to say some of us are born leaders and some of us are not. And that's just the honest, honest to God's truth here. One of the unique challenges that I know that I faced as a minority woman and a business owner was not having a mentor. Not having someone that I can look to that's already sort of broke those barriers.
Yep, that's good.
And not only that, but that goes back to having those limited resources.
True.
We just talked about your small business, and I would say your big business. As a commercial real estate agent, when I was coming into the business, I didn't have the first clue that I needed to have a brick and mortar for my clients to come to.
Right.
So the first thing would be limited access to resources, whether it be mentorship, cash flow, issues with being able to communicate because of your cultural background. People look at you and say, oh, well, she's a such and such woman. Can she articulate herself well? You'll go into an audience and people will say, oh, she's a doctor, and they'll challenge you. So
That's
you have
right.
to know who you are before you go out there to start presenting your brand.
That is so true. I totally agree with you on that. Having been in business myself for 24 years, this coming November, I too experienced a lot of that. I'd walk into a room where no one looked like me, or my credentialing would be questioned, or am I able to even do the job, even without even making a determination of looking at who I am on paper or even having a word with me. And that too can be mentally taxing on you. So we have to really, really work hard in order for people to understand that we do belong in the room and we have the ability to do the job. I want to move now to the next topic, if you will. How can systematic issues like discrimination and lack of access to resources impact mental well-being?
I think that we first give up in our head before we even try. So when you have been a product of discrimination or biases or stereotypes, again, you walk in the room and you have imposter syndrome. You already feel as though you're defeated. So in some cases, you don't even try, right? And also the cultural responsiveness of the people in which we're dealing with. You go into a bank, and you're applying for an SBA loan. You may not have that knowledge of, your credit score, right? Because they do use your personal credit score as a business owner as a reflection on your business. So you're sort of walking around, asking for help, and you're not prepared. So I think that has a huge impact on your business as well.
I totally agree with you on that as well, because if you aren't prepared, if you will, say with your credit or something like that, then that stress and that anxiety it's just on you. But we have people here in the room today who can help you walk through making sure that you have everything that you need, whether it's for a small business loan or if it's that you're looking for a commercial real estate space. Because even in my business, I find that not only yes, I work in the commercial real estate, but at the same time, if I have a client, I want to keep them uplifted. How can I keep them motivated and not give up, like you said just a minute ago? Because sometimes we do feel like, oh no, this is overwhelming and I do want to give up. So doctor, let me ask you this. When we get to the point where we feel like we want to give up, what do you recommend that we do?
Well, you just said it. You need an accountability partner. You need a support system. You need someone that knows your strengths and your weaknesses. I fortunately have a partner at home that can identify when I'm at my burnout. But you need to know yourself. You need to have a sense of self-awareness to be able to know how to say no. Right? Because we think because we're a small business owner and we need clients that we're going to agree. All money isn't good money, right? Like we don't need to agree to everything.
Right.
So
that's good.
In saying that, develop a support system. I go back to mentorship. look at other people who may be where you want to be. Reach out to them and just introduce yourself briefly and let them know that you're interested in starting a business, and would they be interested in giving you 10 or 15 minutes of their time. So developing a support system, identifying your strengths and weaknesses, and then having an accountability partner.
I think that's important. How many of you out there have accountability partners? Okay. Oh, that's real good. That's real good. Because in business, we do need that. And that's that person that will tell you the naked truth. I like to call it the naked truth. But they also motivate us and they support us. I was having a conversation the other day with Councilmember Boney, and I went to answer something, and I started it out with no, and I was wanting to explain, and he says, Sonia, no is a complete sentence. And it took me a long time to understand that no is a complete sentence. So, managing stress and avoiding burnout. Is that even possible, doctor?
It is possible.
Okay.
But we, again, have to, there's a word that we use in psychology called equanimity. And it basically means you don't want to suppress your emotions, but you want to ensure that they don't control you. So you need to practice equanimity. And how you do that is you don't avoid the stressor. You got to be flexible and adapt to the stressors. I'm guilty of not really knowing what my stresses are all the time because I can't predict what happens on a daily basis. However, I go back to having that support system and knowing when to put the phone down, knowing to have clock in, clock out hours, because as an entrepreneur, you're a business owner from the time you go to sleep to the time you wake up. You don't stop becoming a business owner when you go home. And so for some of us, like myself, I will ruminate on, what could I have done better today? What could I do? How could I be better tomorrow? And that will lead to burnout. You will find that you will start to not have a lot of engagement with whatever it is that you're doing. You'll miss deadlines. You'll start to feel hopeless. It'll be harder to get out of the bed, very much like depression. So you need to make sure it's not avoidable. I think for a lot of us, some of us who maybe grew up in environments that weren't as enriching and we didn't grow up with entrepreneurs, we take on a lot, and we don't know how to say no. We don't know that no is a complete sentence. And we have this image that we have to portray that we have it together. I'll tell you right now, as a therapist, I don't have it all together. That's what makes me a great therapist. People can come to me and say, I'm going through this, and I can say, oh, really? I've gone through that. Here's what I've done to make improvements.
That's pretty deep there, doctor, and I totally agree with you on that. You're right. Burnout can look like fatigue. It can look like I'm just fussy and angry, and I don't really realize it. And so just getting to the point where we recognize it, I think that's the most important thing here. Earlier, Mr. Pierre was sharing that this October is also National Small Women Business Month. I think that's what he said it was. And we've got to celebrate ourselves in that. Everyone in here should be always celebrating ourselves. Every day I get up and figure out, okay, what am I most grateful for on today? Despite everything else that I may have going on, despite, just like you said, we have these long lists of to-do lists that never shut off in our heads. Always be grateful and get up and celebrate every day. That's one thing that I do to help. Let me ask you this. What strategies can we implement to manage our stress effectively and while managing our businesses?
That's a really good one. I'm still working on that. My list is growing as we speak, but I thought about this a lot, and I talked to my partner last night, and I say, what are things that what are some things that you see that help stretch me? Because I think challenges you'll see that as an opportunity for growth. Right? Because you're looking at those challenges and you're like, okay, how am I going to get beyond, today? And we have this saying in my house, just keep waking up. Yeah. Because honestly, that's all you have to keep doing is waking up. But I want you to view the challenge as opportunity growth or as growth opportunities. Think of it as, in this moment, you're being taught a lesson. Don't look at it as, I need to shut my business down. This is a dire situation. I've been there. Like they say, throw the baby out with the wash. Like I'll throw the baby out with the wash daily. And then start to cultivate optimism, meaning having positive self-talk. When you wake up in the morning, start talking to yourself and you look in the mirror and say, you know what? You're the baddest boss in Houston, or you're the baddest boss in Missouri. Whatever you need to tell yourself to get yourself going. But you got to have positive self-talk, because remember, you become defeated in your head before you even start to take the action. And then you need to develop effective coping strategies. You may ask, how do you do that? Well, you have to see a therapist, because you got to have self-awareness in order to know what coping works for you. We see kids nowadays, their coping is getting on the iPad and looking at YouTube all day. And I say that I'm gonna be really rich in the future, because a lot of kids that are coming in, into therapy, they can't handle the slightest, a task, going off task, because their brains are so inundated on a daily basis. Well, we're coming in at a time where you can actually use that to your advantage, right? Go on YouTube, start looking at who's doing, whatever it is that you're doing, and what strategies are they coming up with, right? What effective, deep breathing activities, exercise. Me, I like to listen to music. Figure out what those are, but you got to know who you are before you can develop any of this.
You see how she brought that right back to us? Because she mentioned that earlier, that we must know who we are. And that is so important, especially with this cultivating optimism. That's going to even come in effect with us when we're setting our timelines and our strategies. Oftentimes we've heard, or at least I've heard my mentors tell me, don't change the goal. You may just have to extend the timeline out.
I have a question.
Where are you?
I'm right here.
Hi.
I sound like the voice of God. No, seriously. I thought about something, and I was looking around the room at all these business owners, and something hit me. How do you know, as a business owner, if what I'm going through is is mental? In other words, everything is mental, but how do I know I'm going through stress? How do I know, is there something I'm feeling, whether it be employees, whether it be 941's Darryl Grove, or whether it be, if I could pay this office bill, or do I didn't pay my mortgage? And how do I know that's normal stuff, or that I really need to go and check me out mentally? How do you know that?
Well, I'll tell you that I had to learn that by trial and error. When I was getting cancellation notices and the IRS was knocking on my door telling me I forgot to file my 990, and so I didn't have that mentor. But that's a good question. You need to get in a system of support. You need to get in a network of people. They don't have to be in the same business as you, but get with someone else that has started a business and ask those questions. We have these smartphones and we stay on them all day on Instagram and Facebook. Pull open something, ask Google a question. Ask, what is it, what's required in having an LLC? I didn't even know that I needed to have malpractice insurance. Someone could have sued me back then and they would have taken everything, but I didn't know that, right? I didn't know that because there's no one before me. I'm the first generation doctor, I'm the first generation therapist. So I didn't have that person to fill into me and say, hey, these are the things that so you're gonna have to do some research. Mm-hmm. You can't, I know it looks easy, you come up here and you say, oh, I have a business. You have to do the research and you have to put in the work to be able to be successful, because there's a degree of sweat equity that you have to put into your business for it to be successful.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Let me take that one.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Am I in a state where?
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Okay, so I call that escapist mentality. When you feel like you want to escape your own life,
Say that very slowly. You said
It's
it.
called escapist.
Escapist.
Escapist mentality.
Okay, y'all write that down, Google it, all kinds of stuff.
That's big right there.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, personal story here. This is how I knew I was feeling it. Y'all know how you go to make spaghetti and you take those noodles out, and if you try to break them and how hard it is for them to break, but they do break, man, imagine your mental psyche feeling like spaghetti breaking. And at that point, she gave us the answer already on what we need to do. But now I know it's called escapist mentality. Yes, I want to run, jump underneath this table, I want to hide, and I want to do all those things. But having a therapist, a support group, knowing when to say no. And another thing someone taught me a long time ago, when people are pressuring you or they're asking you to do something, step back and say, why me? And that ties back to knowing who you are. Why you is the question that you would probably ask yourself if you're looking in the mirror. And that's also knowing about who you are. Great question. We'll take some other questions out the audience right quick. Anyone have something? Okay.
I'm coming.
God is coming. Do you hear his voice?
How do you know who you are? I'm 35 and I'm still figuring that out.
That's a good question. So I say this all the time. It's not a linear process. It's not like a beginning when you were born and the end. It looks like, a swirly, roller coaster. You're still figuring it out, and that's okay. I'm in my 40s and I'm still trying to figure it out. And the way that you figure that out is you test the waters, right? Like when you were first learning how to swim, you started off in the shallow end, right? And this is where, some of us start off, and then you slowly start to go into the deep end. Now you have to have those strategies. You have to be willing to adapt. You have to be open-minded. You have to be around people that you want to be like. Try to outgrow your group. Don't stay in the same, they say if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong space, right? You want to make sure that you're allowing yourself to grow. So you're open-minded and you're receptive to what, people have to say. And I would even, I ask people all the time, so what do you think about, I'm thinking this, what do you think about that? And if they're like, well, no, that don't sound right. And I'll be like, okay, I'm not going to say that again. But just, testing the waters, with the people that are around you, people that you can trust. And honestly, I've had women in my office that are in their late 50s that are still trying to figure out who they are. So be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you don't know.
That's real good. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Asked this last year, and I'm gonna bring it back up. How do you assess the level of your past trauma to your present day success as far as managing? Everyone has some trauma, but the past experience, how do you assess it? Because, let's take, for example, say for instance, you just had an extra hard father who beat you all the time, and all the time you thought that was making you tough, but that might have a way that you communicate to your employees. I know there could be a whole lot how do you assess your past experience and trauma in determining whether you're on the right mental path in business?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Because I was just speaking to someone about leadership and the type of leader that I am in my company, and being a therapist and then being a boss, being an employer it's very difficult because you don't want to fire people. You want to see the best in them, right? Because that's how therapy is. I want to see the best. But I had someone had to tell me, listen, the way in which you're leading this company, you're not going to last very long. Like, I had to have someone from the outside to come in to look at my business. And it doesn't have to be, a Fortune 500, specialist. It could be someone who is already in business or someone who has experience in leadership. Mm-hmm. It's also good to start taking some of these classes that they have online and reading some of these books on leadership. So that you can identify what your leadership style is, because I've been in clinical psych most of my career, so I don't really have a lot of background in leadership. I feel like I'm a leader, but am I a leader that other people want to follow? And you have to ask yourself that too. Am I somebody that other folks want to follow, right?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I know Mr. Pierre has his hand up again. I saw another hand.
I was going to ask you.
Go ahead.
When you started your business, how did you, I guess, integrate your experiences, your cultural experiences, your backgrounds? How did you integrate that into your business?
Ooh, so my name is Sonia Brown Marshall. I'm going to tell you the truth about that because it was tough. Obviously I'm an African American female, and the business that I went into is extremely male dominated, and most of them are white males. So when I started my company, who knew that naming the company after my last name, Marshall, was going to give me trouble? It was hard getting business because I'd walk into a room and people would be like, oh, you own the company? So I said, you know what, in order for me to be able to compete, I'm gonna not use Marshall. I'll just say my name is Sonia Brown. So everywhere I went, I introduced myself as Sonia Brown. I was just the CEO of a company that was owned. But while I was doing that, I saw other things that I needed to do in order to really make that face look real. Like I incorporated my company. That way I became a W-2 employee. Now I really am an employee of a company that I own. But talking about cultural differences and how you just gotta find a way to make it work, because oftentimes people will look at you first and make a determination before they know that you're really smart and that you're really good at what you do. So sometimes just for me, making sure that I put my best foot forward in an industry where really I wasn't quite accepted just yet, but now I do okay. 24 years later, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes.
So what are some of the coping mechanisms that you would use if you're anxious? Especially like starting a business, like, am I good enough? Do I know how to get the people? How am I gonna market? And you start having this negative self-talk. So how do you work through those anxious ideas in your head?
Well, you have to do thought stopping first. It's natural for us to be negative. It actually takes more time for us, more energy for us to be positive. So you have to do some thought stopping. As soon as you identify that you feel yourself going down what I call the rabbit hole, and you start to have those negative thoughts, you have to stop them. And you have to ask yourself, is what I'm thinking going to be productive in the next 30 minutes? Is what I'm thinking the truth? Is what I'm thinking going to get the goals that I'm trying to get accomplished? Is it going to add to it, or is it going to take away? So just ask yourself those questions. Is that true? Am I really a bad person? Am I really an ineffective leader? And if the answer is yes, because some of us are that self-aware, yeah, you're not a good communicator. Well, how am I going to work on that, right? And that's when you start to dig into yourself and say, okay, these are things I know I need to work on, and make a little checklist. I do that nightly, where I used to do it more often than that, but I used to journal. Journaling is good. Start writing down those negative thoughts and then crossing them off the list. If you identify with those negative thoughts, if you can come up with evidence to support them, then you need to make the change. You need to start identifying how you can make that change.
That's real good, doctor. One thing that I started doing is, especially when I start getting a lot of negative thoughts, I make sure that I put myself around something that's positive, whether that's listening to something. I made the investment every year. I pay for it through Masterclass. And so I get to go and hear from other thought leaders and other people whom are doing amazing things. And just the other day, just to share this tidbit with you, and we'll take maybe 2 more questions if we can. I was having one of those doubtful down days, and I just turned on Masterclass, and there was Mark Cuban. And he was just talking in the simplest of language, if you would. And he said, they asked him, well, how do you determine if you want to go into this business or whatever? And he says, oh, I just get the spreadsheet out. And I said, that's what I do. He said, yeah, and I just do my calculations on this little simple spreadsheet. And if it makes sense on my little spreadsheet, then I go for it. And that little boost right there just let me know, okay, I'm all right. So that's one thing that I do. Another question from the audience?
Yeah, we have time for one more question. You ready? Okay, here we go.
I don't know that mine is a question or maybe a comment but for those people who are having issues where they're doubting themselves, do you not think that it goes back to planning? Because a lot of times people jump out and they really haven't done the planning. They really haven't invested in themselves or their dream to ensure that success. And even when she was saying, you know, you begin to say, well, am I good enough or this. A lot of that can be tied to knowing you really haven't planned for it. And then when you jump out there, then you're starting to question yourself. So do you think that ties back to to doing the correct planning and really investing in yourself to prepare to step out and be that business owner?
Sometimes it does, but I'll be honest with you. Planning helps, but for a lot of us, we have past traumas that tell us that we're not good enough. We grow up in environments where we don't see entrepreneurs, we don't see successful people. So that a lot of that, you know, even with planning, even with all the planning that I had, I sat in the office for 9 months and didn't have one client and went to work every single day as if I did, because I just didn't know if I would get a client. I had to wait for credentialing and a bunch of other stuff, which is another story. But I sat there for 9 months and I doubted myself every single day. But I told myself, when I do get that first client, I'm gonna be prepared. I wrote SOPs, I wrote, you know, policy procedures. I kept myself busy, but every day I said, this is probably not for me. And it's because I don't know anybody else that looks like me that's in my family that's done this. So it has a lot to do with what you said, your past traumas, with your environment, lack of planning, what you tell yourself on a daily basis.
Well, I want you guys to wrap up, but one of the things I wanted to mention to that, a lot of times, this is a quote that everyone has heard before, but I love it because it's just like me, and I feel like I do it every single day. They say entrepreneur is like jumping out the window and building your parachute on the way down, or building your plane all the way down. And just when you think you got your parachute all fixed up and you throw it on right before you hit the ground, all of a sudden something comes up and you realize that wasn't the right parachute. So it's real life type thing. But I want you to do some closing wrap ups as it relates to mental health and business before we transition.
Okay, do you wanna?
Absolutely. You know, Dr. Harris, I was just going to ask you if you maybe wanted to provide people with some apps or some books that you would recommend just quickly as we wrap up, and then I'll summarize a couple of topics that we picked up on today and we'll close out.
So a good book that helped me as I was going through my experience as an entrepreneur was Atomic Habits. That's a really good book. It's about planning. A book that my partner suggested to me and I'm reading is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And in terms of mental health, we do a lot of self-sabotaging. And there's a book out there that is a really, really good book. I normally don't recommend mental health books because I want you to come to me and not get free self-help. But it's called The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. And that book is so awesome. It teaches you about how your childhood traumas can affect your present day thinking.
I got you. Dr. Harris, I know you'll be floating around a little bit, but did you bring some business cards and stuff like that? Because sometimes we do need a good therapist ever so often. This was a great discussion, awesome talking points. Remember, guys, we cannot be the escapist mentality. We can't have that. We must cultivate optimism, and we must thought stopping. I thought that was pretty good. When we start having negative thoughts, we've got to stop them. Dr. Harris, thank you. It has been a privilege to share this podium with you on today. Thank you, audience.
Thank you so much.